Lily, and in this video interview we are giving some more perspectives in relation to starting self-forgiveness and assisting and supporting those that within them face the question of where do I start with self-forgiveness. And so this point has been discussed before. However, there has been still many human beings struggling with that point within themselves of where do I start, what do I start with. And so we'll, within this video interview, discuss some more internal mind points within facing this question within ourselves when starting self-forgiveness, because obviously, as only the mind consciousness system can do, there is lots of layers within the things that come up within ourselves. So firstly, to assist and support oneself with when the question of where or with what do I start applying self-forgiveness, to make sure that it's not an excuse, justification or validation that one is trying or attempting to use to manipulate oneself in postponing the actual starting of walking and applying self-forgiveness, is when that question comes up within self and there is anxiety attached. It will be experienced not like it will be a very subtle anxiety that one will experience within just under one's diaphragm, right in the center of one's solar plexus. It will be a very, very slight subtle energy. So ask yourself the question, where do I start with self-forgiveness? And if that anxiety comes up within self with that question, it means that one is actually using that question as an excuse, justification, or validation. One is deliberately sabotaging self in starting, applying, and walking self-forgiveness, and self, in fact, already has the answer of where to start. Or if one's question is with what to start applying self-forgiveness, and that slight sense of anxiety comes up, one do know exactly what to start applying self-forgiveness for and of, but one is deliberately trying or attempting to manipulate oneself in sabotaging oneself and one's process of change through using or abusing a question to make as though self is powerless or victimized in terms of assisting and supporting oneself to learn how to do something and then actually do it and walk it through for and as self. So then what we suggest, when you realize that that question is asked within anxiety and you've seen, realized, understood within self-honesty, that one is accepting and allowing self to use or abuse that question to hide behind, to justify, validate, and excuse why self hasn't started or is not starting or is afraid or things like that. I mean, fear in itself, when that comes up within facing self-forgiveness, when that anxiety moves into like fear of not knowing where to start or with what to start, that point of I don't know is also means that the mind consciousness system use for manipulating and victimizing oneself within facing self within a particular point or manifestation. So in a general context within one's process, do not accept and allow that statement, I don't know, because the mind loves that statement, because in that statement one is making the decision to in fact give one's power away to the mind consciousness system, because you're saying I don't know, yet within that very statement one is giving the mind power, because one then goes into oneself, one inferiorizes self, one diminishes oneself, when all that is required is a breath, a release, a investigation, a reading, a getting information, asking questions, making sure that one fully understands what it is that one requires to do, be, live and express, and then one do it for self. It is a simple application of educating self on a particular new point that self is facing. So therefore, another perspective of why and how we know the point of going into anxiety when you're asking, where do I start self-forgiveness, or with what do I start self-forgiveness? If that anxiety comes up, your context of why and how that is a justification, validation, or excuse to just not start is because one has all the examples that is within the forums. There are multiple human beings within the forums assisting and supporting, and a simple step to take is to ask. And therefore, if that question within self remains within self for longer than a week, it is obvious self-manipulation and sabotaging, because the support and assistance is right there in front of self with a click of a button. And then within the point of I don't know is an absolute evolution of that point of self-manipulation, because again, all one's examples are here. One can simply ask, and self shall receive. And the ITD forum is available. There are many human beings walking their practical processes, and there are moderators assisting and supporting every day with ensuring that as everyone is assisted and supported to the best of their ability, that they have time according to their own lives as well. However, therefore, in terms of that tendency of self-victimization within utilizing the excuse of I don't know, realize that that is a real mind manipulation point where one going to immediate inferiority, self-diminishment, limiting self. And when all that was required from the beginning is simply listening to interviews, participating in the forums, and asking. Therefore, if one, for example, sees something in relation to Desteni, and one's curious about it, and one would like to know more, rather than going into that point of falling into the mind of, I don't know what's going on, rather stop, breathe, stand up, and ask. So look at this point in general throughout one's life, where one immediately, just because one do not know, one going to taking it personally and going to victimization, inferiorizing, limiting self, diminishing self, instead of going, okay, I do not understand this yet, let me find out. Just changing that point within one's world and one's reality will already assist and support self with becoming more self-directive within self and self's process. Alright, so we're back to where one go into how do I apply self-forgiveness, or where do I start with self-forgiveness. And when an anxiety comes up, what we suggest is to look at the anxiety and assist and support self with some self-forgiveness right there. One can start, for example, with the anxiety coming up. What one is now from, for example, this interview, seeing, realizing, understanding, is that there's an energy of reaction coming up with asking the question. If the question was real, like one really wants to find out how and where to start, it would be a direct question, and it wouldn't just be hanging around in your mind and be used as like going onto the forums and complaining. It'll be a straight, direct, forward question that comes up. And because if it is that you really want to find out how it is that you do something or where to start, you will actually go and ask, and it will be a clear, direct statement question. Whereas if one asks within reaction because of a hidden agenda, it will be asked within the nature of complaining or whining or throwing a tantrum. So one can clearly see the difference between accepting and allowing self to use a question as a manipulation point, Whereas to actually be a question, ask it, and receive what it is that self is in fact looking for. So one can, within asking that question, where to start self-forgiveness or how to start self-forgiveness, with that anxiety coming up, it's indicating that self already do know where to start and how to start. Self just does not want to start because you do not want to change. And then one will try and further hide within complaining and whining and throwing tantrums about where to start and how to start, when all of it is really like a child throwing a tantrum, not wanting to change. And you'll try and postpone your process as long as you can by sabotaging actually just starting, to not have to start, to not have to change. So for those that is stuck within that time loop, realize that you, to a certain extent and degree, do know where to start and how to start. And those that ask where to start and how to start as a simple, direct question that immediately came up within themselves and immediately went to manifestation in asking for support and assistance, they also actually do know where to start and how to start. But just in asking that question, it's more of just cross-referencing and confirming what it is they already know, and that's cool. So realize and understand that we're not saying, for those that do experience anxiety within where to start and how to start, we're not saying don't ask. We're simply showing you what it is you're accepting and allowing within yourself, within that reaction with the question, and that one is actually facing a point of fear of change. So one can immediately within that walk your self-forgiveness straight from there, and then one simply start. I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to experience anxiety with the question of asking how to start and where to start. I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to actually react to self-forgiveness and not want to apply it because I actually fear changing within myself, and therefore try to hide that fear within being anxious about self-forgiveness, and then changing the question of how to start and where to start into a manipulation point to try and stretch out my process as much and as long as possible to validate, justify, or excuse why I'm just not starting. I forgive myself that I haven't accepted and allowed myself to simply ask for support and assistance of where to start and how to start, but instead utilize the questions as a means of self-manipulation and trying to manipulate others to support me or help me or validate me in my experience of how to start and where to start. I forgive myself that I haven't accepted and allowed myself to see, realize, and understand that I in fact already know where to start and how to start. I am and may be unsure, but I can also ask just to confirm. But accepting and allowing myself to try and use and abuse the questions as a means to not face myself is simply unacceptable. And so one can start from there in expanding even on this interview for yourself if you'd like to. If you find that you experience anxiety and fear within where to start and how to start, and realize that that reaction is simply you fearing and being anxious within yourself about changing. And then to transcend that point, immediately walk to self-forgiveness and then ask within the forums. You can share, okay, this is my understanding of self-forgiveness. Is this correct? Can you assist and support me with more perspective? I mean, that is really simple to do. Ask for support and assistance. Then creating a whole situation, scenario around within your mind consciousness system, mulling it around, trying to look for an answer, when obviously self-forgiveness isn't a normal current part of your life. So obviously you're going to need to find out more about it. So instead of going into taking it personally because one do not yet understand something, rather ask. And that's also an ego point, really, with many human beings, because we always think we know it all. And then we go into our egos trying to figure things out in our mind when we do not know it all. So let go of ego, ask for support and assistance. It is all here within the ITD forum. Especially, you'll be directed to interviews, and then you can start your process and even share your self-forgiveness within the forums. And then further within that, when you become comfortable, you can have a look at our Desteni process, where you are assisted and supported with incorporating self-forgiveness into your world and your reality more practically, more structurally, in relation to specific points, where you're guided through a whole process of the main manifestations of your total mind consciousness system, and you are practically directed point by point about what to apply self-forgiveness on, which will already assist and support self within that process of what to apply self-forgiveness on. Alright, thank you very much.